Okay. Okay, hopefully everyone can see my slides.
Yep, we
As
can
I
see
said,
them,
welcome.
and you're coming through clearly.
Okay, thank you very much, Ryan. Okay, so welcome to this workshop, as I said, on tips and information for a successful application. As I said, my name is Mary Hart. I'm part of the wider EU and global research development team here. There are 5 of us, and each of us has...
Yes.
Hello?
It's showing that the presentation can't be displayed. I can view the presentation.
Okay. Is that an issue for anybody else? Or maybe that's... Ryan, is it okay?
I can see the presentation.
I can see it.
I also cannot see the presentation.
Okay. It could be something on certain settings. I guess if most people can see it, I'll just continue. And I could ask those people who can't see it if they can play about with their settings a little. I'll try to stop sharing and then reshare and see if that happens, if that works. Stop presenting. Okay. And I'll reshare it. Okay, I've restarted the presentation. Ryan, can you see it?
Yes, I can see it. And just a reminder to anyone who can't see it, we will be sharing it afterwards, so you can see the slides after the presentation.
Yes, we are
Okay,
recording.
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and then if I could ask everyone to maybe, yes, mute their mics. Okay, so we'll just continue then. So, as I said, I'm part of a bigger EU and global research development team, and we're each responsible for different schools within QUB. So hopefully the QUB PIs here and the QUB PIs that your fellows are working with will know who's responsible. And so we're here to give answer any queries, give advice, give guidance, and provide a non-expert review of your application if that's wanted. I guess basically what we would like to do is help you to raise the competitiveness of your bid, because part of the role of this scheme is to bring global talent into Europe. And as a university, we're also interested in bringing your global talent into our university. So that is why we would like to provide you with every support that you need in order to produce a competitive application. Okay, so just to go through the agenda, I'm going to give an overview of the Marie Curie postdoc fellowships, go through the application process, and then go through part B1, the excellence section. At the end of the excellence section, then there's a question on training, and we're going to hear from Lisa Douglas, who is the PDC officer. So our PDC is our Postdoctoral Development Centre at Queen's. It's a very unique centre across the UK in universities, and it provides support and training for postdoctoral fellows. So after Lisa talks, I think we'll all be ready for a bit of a break. So we'll have a 10-minute break or so, depending on timing. And then after the break, I continue with part B1 of the application, talking about the impact section. The impact section has also got, it wants you to talk about public engagement activities and then also the commercialization, if that's relevant, of your research. So in order to help you with that, we'll hear from Donna Rogers, who's a public engagement manager in the Faculty of Medicine here at Queen's, and she'll talk about public engagement activities at Queen's. We'll hear then on the commercialization of research at Queen's from Gareth Caves, who's a commercialization manager. I'll then continue with the implementation section of part B1, give an overview of B2, and at that stage I think we'll all be ready to finish, and there'll be hopefully a good bit of time at the end for questions. Okay, so just some basics on the fellowship. So it is a competitive fellowship. Here's the success rates for the last 4 years, and there's about an average success rate of about sorry, it looks like somebody had muted. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes,
Right.
we can hear you.
We can hear you. Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
sorry.
yes, yes.
So that somebody had muted my mic. Okay, I'll just continue. So the average success rate is about 16%. And as I said, this workshop is to help everyone here to get into that success rate, that successful category. And there's no reason why you can't all be. Okay, so I said one of the objectives of the fellowship is to bring global talent into Europe, but a major objective of the fellowship is to enable fellows to enhance their skills, leading to improved career prospects. Sorry, I'll just use the cursor here. I'll just use a laser pointer here, sorry. To improve career prospects within academia and beyond. There's a strong focus on international, interdisciplinary and intersectoral experience. So how do you use your fellowship? What's involved in it? So the first thing is development of a research project that uses the complementary expertise of the supervisor and fellow. And I just want to sort of emphasize that complementary expertise. So a lot of fellowships are about, the fellow coming to the host and gaining all of the expertise. This is about the fellow coming to the host and also bringing their skills and sharing their skills and expertise. And that has to be reflected in the research project. It should be a project that can only be accomplished by the joint expertise of the fellow and the supervisor. So neither alone could be able to accomplish this project. Another way to achieve the objectives of the fellowship is you can add in optional secondments as long as these add value to the fellowship, and I'll talk a bit more about these in a minute. And then there's a big focus on skills development and training, both through the research project for your research skills, but also for transferable skills. And I'll go into some detail. And as I said, we'll hear from Lisa from what's available through the Queen's PDC for training. Okay, just quickly before we begin, and hopefully everyone has gone through the eligibility. If there's any issues or if you've any worries, please do contact the contact from our team who's responsible for your school. So, fellows career stage, you should be in possession of a doctoral degree and you should have a maximum of 8 years research experience from the date that you gain that degree. There's also the mobility rule. So fellows must not have resided or carried out their main activity in the country of the host institution. For Queen's, that's obviously the UK, for more than 12 months in the preceding 36 months immediately before the call deadline. So any worries, as I said, please contact one of our team. So just to go back to this intersectoral activity, the ability to put in secondments and non-academic placements, these are optional. And you won't be penalised if you don't include them in your fellowship, but they possibly could add value and may raise your final score. I think somebody's mic is maybe not muted there. So if possible, and they add value, they are a good thing to add in, but I know they're not always possible. So what are secondments? Secondments are worldwide for up to a third of the fellowship duration. And as I said, they should be in line with the project objectives and add significant value to the fellowship. So they can either be done in a single period. So if they're up to a third of the fellowship duration, you can have up to 8 months on a secondment, either as a single period or as a few different shorter periods. You can do them in any organisation, either academic or non-academic. And because it's for a significant length of time, you should have a supervisor at the secondment organisation. So what is non-academic placement then? So a secondment is embedded within your fellowship. Non-academic placement is an additional up to 6 months placement at the end of your fellowship. It has to be just a non-academic institution or organisation an industry, a charity, a policy making organisation, anything that's non-academic, and it should be an EU member state or associated country. And the important thing is this is added at the end of your fellowship. So if you do a 24-month fellowship and added a 6-month placement, that would be 30 months. And it should demonstrate added value for the project and importantly the career development of the fellow. Also, a couple of other things you can add in is you don't have to have these quite sort of exact secondments. You can also have more spontaneous things like short visits in your fellowship. And these are just much smaller spontaneous things where you can go to an organisation outside of Queen's to do things like to shadow, to gain experience, to have data collection. And then there's also co-supervision. So you have a primary supervisor, your host, but you can also add in additional co-supervisors, and that possibly is a way that you could enable interdisciplinary aspects of the project, and interdisciplinarity is very much encouraged for these fellowships. So it's something there to think about as well. Right, so those are the fellowship basics. And now I'm just going to go through the online application process, which is done on the EU funding and tender site. And I know many of you may already have been on this site because these fellowships have been open since the start of May, but just for those that haven't and to make sure that we're all on the same page. So this is an overview of the application. There is an online form, Part A, and that asks for administrative information, and I'm going to go through that in a bit of detail in a minute. But the heart of your application really is this Part B technical description, and it's really this Part B1 that is the main heart of your application. It is all about your project. It has these 3 different categories: excellence, impact, and implementation, with a 10-page limit, and that is uploaded as an application form. And that's really where we're going to spend the most part of this workshop, just looking at Part B1. There is a Part B2. It asks for some information on the CV, capacity of the host, etc., and we will go through that at the end. Okay, so this is the EU funding and tenders portal, the application screen. So if you hit this, the link in this previous slide here, or actually probably even this link, you will get opened up into the EU funding and tenders portal screen. So if you already have an account, it'll say sign in. If you don't have an account, it's going to ask you to register. So you would need to register on there. So you see the call here on the left, there's various information, and underneath the call there'll be lots of information on the topic, description, etc. And I would say to you, make sure that you read all that information. It's all important. However, if you do scroll to the bottom, this is where you start the submission. And there's 2 different types of fellowships. This workshop is really focused on the European fellowships because that is hopefully where most people on this call are applying to. So that is where you come from an international country and you come into Europe for up to 2 years on this fellowship. So that is the one that you'll want to tick, and you'll hit start submission there. And once you hit start submission, you will get into this screen on your EU funding and tender site. Lakimer, yes, thank you. Right, okay, so this is the screen that you'll get into. It gives you, here's where you will download your Part B application form, and we'll talk about that later. So that's important to download that. It'll also ask you for some information on Queen's up here. This is our Queen's PIC code that's needed. It'll then ask you to designate the roles, so researcher roles, supervisor roles, and then I would also ask you to add in one of our team who's designated to your school as a contact person, and that means then that we can get access to your application. And then down here at the bottom, then it asks for various project details, and they're also in the Part A forms. I'm going to talk about them when we go through those forms. Okay, so when you hit this button at the bottom, save and go to the next step, it'll bring you to this screen. So here is the edit button that allows you to access the Part A forms, and here is where you will upload your Part B forms when they're ready. So if you were submitting this, you would hit validate and you'd make sure that everything was okay, that you weren't getting any warnings. You will get a warning if you're over your 10-page limit for Part B1. If it's all okay, you can hit submit. And what's really nice about this system is you can submit multiple times. And when you re-upload a new version of your Part B1, it will overwrite your old version. So I would say to you, don't leave it to the last day to upload stuff onto this site. At least get a version of it up there. So if there is some massive technical hitch that happens in the last day, you at least have a near final version there. And if there is no technical hitches and you re-upload a new version of B1, that will overwrite your old version. So it's a nice part of this system that you can keep re-uploading new versions. Okay, so that's the overview. I'm going to start now and go into just a little bit of detail on the Part A forms. So this is the Part A forms. When you go into that previous screen there that says edit forms, this is where you're going to get into. It's going to show you this, and along the top there'll be the different parts. So there's 5 parts: general information, participants, budget, ethics and security, and other questions. So general information, it asks you for a project acronym, it asks you for a title. It'll ask you to pick a scientific area, and it gives you a choice of 8 panels. So you should pick the panel that most closely aligns to the topic of your project. The next thing it asks for is a descriptor. You are allowed to input up to 5 keywords that most closely align to the topic of your project. And do be careful when you're putting those keywords in, because it's those keywords that will determine what expert reviewers are assigned to your project. So it is important that you get those as aligned as possible to the topic of your project. And then finally, the abstract. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about the abstract in the next slide. So then you have this participants information. It'll ask you for some information on your host department, your supervisor, and on your researcher. It'll also ask you if you are greater than 8 years from your PhD, a pop-up box is going to appear to ask you to justify that time. So if you are on maternity leave or paternity leave, etc., that is where you'll have to justify if you're more than 8 years post-PhD. It'll also ask you where you were resident for the last 5 years. It also asks you then for 5 publications and 5 most relevant projects and infrastructure, and those relate to QUB. Just to be clear, that those are relevant for QUB as the host institution. They aren't relevant to the fellow. And then finally, it asks you if QUB has a gender equality plan, and yes, tick yes for that. We do have. So just to go back to the abstract, just the abstract of your application is very important. It's going to be the very first thing read by your reviewers. So it's going to give them a sense of, do they want to read the rest of this application? Are they excited by this application? So you do need to sell it, sell your project and make them enthused and want to read the rest of your application. So what should you put in it? Put in it, what are you going to do? Why are you going to do it? i.e., what's the importance of your project? How are you going to do it? And what will be the impact on your career for the fellowship? As I say, it's an important paragraph, because it really sets the scene, and it's the first thing that your evaluator will read. So do it at the end when you have, done the rest of your application and you're really clear what your project is and you're really clear what your training needs, etc. are, and spend time on it and make it clear and concise. Okay, so then the next thing that is looked at in the Part A forms is the budget. So just if you look at this top table, the budget is divided up into researcher costs and then institutional costs. So the researcher costs, you get a living allowance, You also get a mobility allowance, which covers your private transport and accommodation. And if relevant, if you have a partner or dependent children, there's a family allowance. And all of that constitutes the salary of the fellow. If it's relevant, there's also a long-term leave allowance if you have more than 30 days leave, and there's a special needs allowance if that's needed. So then there's institutional costs, there's a research, training and network contribution. So that is going to cover the cost of your project, any consumables that are needed. It's also going to cover the cost of travel to conferences or training sites, etc., or to your secondment site. And it'll also cover things like visa costs and NHS surcharges, which I know can be quite substantial. So that's the research, training, network contribution. Then there's this management and indirect contribution, and that is what goes to the host institution, to Queen's, to cover the cost of hosting the fellowship. So that's the numbers up there. What you will see in the online table is this. It will ask you, are you eligible for family allowance? Either yes or no. It'll ask you for the duration of your fellowship, up to 24 months. And it'll also ask you, where is your fellowship going to be? And in this case, it's United Kingdom. And that's important because that determines this country coefficient. It's different for every country, and it varies depending on the cost of living. So the UK one is quite high. And so that multiplies all of the figures up by this coefficient. So once you've put in this information, this table will auto-fill. So you don't have to add anything yourself. It's going to automatically all fill with the budget figures. Okay, so then the next section in A is this ethics and security section. It's obviously going to be very dependent on your project. And if you answer yes for any of the questions, it's going to require further information. But I just wanted to show you here this question number 6. It specifically asks if there's the involvement of non-EU countries. The UK is not in the EU. We're an associated country to Horizon Europe. So you do have to tick yes, there will be non-EU countries, and that your fellowship will be hosted in the United Kingdom. So that's part A of the application. And now I just want to get into part B. This, as I say, is the heart of your application. It is the technical description, and specifically part B1. It has 3 sections: excellence, impact and implementation, with a 10-page limit. As I showed you on the previous slide, you can upload the template, and this is the front page of the template. So this next slide, so this is the template here. It has the different questions in it, and it also has these codes, which are important not to delete. So just a few tips and hints on the layout. Use the 2025 proposal template and headings. Do not make sure and download those from the site for this year. Do not use last year's, and do not delete these codes here. These are needed for processing of your application. Make sure and address all points in the question. So some of these questions, particularly, for example, this 1.2 has multiple points. It'll ask you about methodology, asks you about interdisciplinary approaches, it asks you about gender, it asks you about open science. And I would find this particular question that, I'm reviewing applications and people might have talked about their methodology and their interdisciplinary approach, but they might forget to put in their gender, any gender aspects or open science aspects. If you don't address all points in this question or in any of the questions, you will not score well, and you will not be competitive. So make sure and answer everything. Make your proposal easy to read. Each evaluator could have up to 40 proposals to read. It can make your proposal stand out. Don't have big blocks of text. Break them up, emphasize key points in bold or use highlighted text. Use diagrams and tables. Make it easy for the evaluator. Make him want to read your application, make it stand out. Keep technical jargon, acronyms to a minimum. Your reviewer may not necessarily, those keywords have been used to assign your reviewer, but they may not necessarily be a total expert in your area. Do keep in mind that somebody should be able to read your application who has a background in reading technical documents, and they should be able to read and understand it with that sort of background. They should not have to be a complete expert in your field. And that's the sort of, clarity with which you want to be writing your application. Avoid long sentences. Sometimes I read applications and there's some sentences of 2 or 3 lines, and you can really lose the run of the meaning of a sentence if it's too long. So do try to keep them as brief and concise as possible. And then just references can be put at the bottom in footnotes. Okay. Yeah, just to emphasize, as Albert Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Really, I would say write your first draft of your application, get everything down there, put it away for a week or so, take it back out again and rewrite it simpler and with more clarity. As I say, you want to aim for that sort of technical audience or reviewer who can understand your application, but who may not necessarily be an expert in it, and who wants to read your application and finds it simple to read and finds good linkage and coherence in your application. Do co-develop your application together, fellow and host, working collaboratively. Don't lock yourself away in a room and work on it on your own. The best ones are those that are worked on collaboratively. So just, I just want to go over the evaluation process just so as you know what's involved. So your proposals come in, they are allocated to 3 reviewers based on those descriptors and keywords that you indicated on your application form. Each of those 3 reviewers then prepares an individual evaluation report. They will then meet to form a consensus group, and they'll discuss and agree a score and comments and draft a consensus report at that point. So it's really these 3 evaluators that you're really, targeting when these are the people who are going to score and have an important role in evaluating your application. So their consensus report then goes to a review committee. And that panel, you'll have a rapporteur or a lead reviewer for your application. They will discuss it at the review panel, and then the review panel will rank the proposals. And realistically, you need to score 90 to 95 plus, depending on the panel, in order to get funded in this scheme. Okay, so here are the questions in the part B1. The questions mirror the evaluation criteria. So the evaluator has a form with all these questions on it and will be scoring each part of these questions. So each section is scored out of 5 and is subject to a weighting factor. So the excellence section is 50% of the score, the impact section is 30%, and the implementation section is 20% of the score. So now I'm just going to go through partially the excellence section, but before I do that, I want to point you to an excellent resource that's available and which will be of great help to you in preparing your application. And it's this Marie Curie Postdoctoral Fellowship Handbook, which is compiled by the National Contact Points for Marie Curie. So this is an excellent resource, and I would suggest when you're writing your application, have it open on your screen right beside your application. It goes through all the questions, and in blue is the suggestions that they have for what you should have in your answer. They also go through the evaluation summary reports, and they give examples of strengths that were highlighted by reviewers and applications, and also weaknesses that were highlighted by reviewers. So I can't recommend this as enough. And if you get nothing else out of this talk and this workshop, I would say using this handbook should be one thing that you should take away. It really is a great resource for doing your application. You should have it side by side, as I say, when you do your application, and make sure that you cover every single point that they highlight in blue for each question. So the 2024, this is the 2024 handbook. The 2025 one is not out yet, but when it is, each of our team will be sending it on to you if you're working with them and preparing your application. Okay, so we're going to get into the part B1, the excellence section. It's 50% of your score. So out of the 10-page limit, you would want to be having about 6 to 6.5 pages for this section. Okay, so there's 4 questions in the section. The first question is quality and pertinence of the project's research and innovation objectives, the extent to which they are ambitious and go beyond the state of the art. So what I would suggest is ease the evaluator into the application, put a simple summary up front. In a few sentences at the very top of your application, state what's the challenge, what's the overall aim for your project, and what do you expect the impact of your project to be. And I recommend that because I think it's good to give the evaluator a complete sense of what you're trying to achieve right at the start so that they can then read the rest of your application. Oh, someone else is now in control, sorry. Somebody else took control of the application, but no, it's fine. So so that, you know, they're now reading the rest of your application, knowing exactly what you're trying to achieve in your project. Sometimes I read applications and they start with lots of background, and it's a long time before you actually know what the point of the project is or what the aim of it is. And I always think it's nice to put a little summary up front. So then now you've done that and the evaluator has a big picture, go back and put in the detail. You know, talk about the challenge. Why is it important? Add in some statistics to illustrate the scale of the challenge. You know, if it's a policy priority for the EU or globally, you know, put that in as well. Really, you want to get across, you know, why is this challenge important enough for you to address in your project? Then next thing, what are your objectives to address that challenge? And you should have around 2 to 3 research objectives for, you know, definitely no more than 3 for a 2-year project. So then now you've laid out your objectives. So what is the current state of art of work in the field? What's happening? You know, give a bit of a review of the literature. What is it that other people are currently doing to address that challenge? And then how is what you are proposing to do go beyond that current state of the art? What is it that's novel and new and exciting, and why should you be funded to do it? And importantly, if you have any previous work addressing the challenge, or the host has any previous work, do cite that, because that really shows why you are the person to be funded to do this. And, you know, because you can make that argument, look, we've already done this and here's how we're going to build on it. Okay, so that's 1.1. So you've already then in 1.1, you've set out your challenge, you've set out your aims and your objectives, and then 1.2 is around the methodology that you will use. So 1.2 asks for the soundness of the proposed methodology, including interdisciplinary approaches, consideration of the gender dimension and other diversity aspects if relevant for the research project, and the quality of open science practices. So there is a lot in this question that needs addressed. So the first thing you need to address is the methodology. So discuss the work you will carry out to address each objective, and each objective should be addressed in a work package. So what it wants is what are the experiments, the techniques or the approaches you will use, and why will you use those approaches? Why is that the best way to sort of tackle this project or tackle the challenge? And importantly, do mention if there's any equipment or resources or expertise that's uniquely available at Queen's, because that obviously justifies why you've chosen to come to Queen's to do this project, because you can point to it, look, there's samples here that are available nowhere else. If you go on a secondment or a short visit or have a second supervisor, explain in this section how they are contributing to the project. discuss interdisciplinary aspects. So as I stated at the start, interdisciplinarity is an important focus for this scheme. So I would really encourage you to try and incorporate interdisciplinary aspects into your project. If you don't think interdisciplinarity is relevant, then do explain why. Don't just ignore this. It has to be addressed in some form. So then you also need to talk about gender dimension and other diversity aspects. How does gender impact on the design of your research? So, for example, will the results of your project be equally relevant to all genders, etc.? Again, this has to be addressed. You can't just ignore it. Again, if you think for whatever reason gender is not relevant, then do state that and do state why. There is a lot of good discussion in the Marie Curie NCP handbook that I talked about. So do go to that and have a good read of the points and tips there for the gender dimension. Use of AI tools. If you plan to use artificial intelligence in your project, the evaluators will assess the technical robustness of the system. Oh, sorry, I'll go back here. Will assess the technical robustness of the AI. Open science approach. So the EU wants to have all of the research as open and available, as early as possible in your project. So you need to talk about what approaches you're going to use. Again, there's good references in the Marie Curie Net Handbook for that. And then finally, data management. So how will your data be managed according to the FAIR principles? And that are those principles here: findability, accessibility, interoperability, and reuse of digital assets. So the data management plan is a mandatory deliverable of this fellowship. It has to be submitted, I think, within 6 months. But at this stage in the application, you should summarize the main aspects of how you will take into account data management in your project. Okay, so that's those two questions. So the next question then moves on away from the project to you and your training and your supervision. So 1.3 is quality of the supervision, training, and the two-way transfer of knowledge between the researcher and the host. So supervision, basically you want to show why is this supervisor and any co-supervisors the best people to host this fellowship. And there's a lot of good tips in the Marie Curie Net Handbook for what you should be putting into that section. So I'd just point you to that. The next part is training and two-way transfer of knowledge. So there is the knowledge that the host will give to the researcher, and then there's the knowledge that the researcher will give to the host. So the knowledge that the host will give to the researcher is about the training activities for the researcher. So basically you as the researcher should identify your weakness in your current set of skills and then describe the training and opportunities at QUB that will fit your scientific and transferable skill needs. And I'm going to talk about that in the next couple of slides. Do mention the career development plan. Again, that's a mandatory output in the first few months of your project. So do say that you'll be preparing that. So then the next set of skills is the researcher to host. And as I mentioned earlier, this fellowship is just not about the fellow gaining skills. It's about what the fellow can bring to, to the host group, to the school, and to the wider institution. So what are the skills, expertise, and networks that you can bring with you? And then importantly, how will you transfer those skills? Will you do it in a workshop? Will you give a seminar? Will you do a demonstration, etc.? You have to be specific on that. And again, there's good guidelines in the Marie Curie Net Handbook. So just to go back to skills in a way that you might think about, what training activities you would like, do a bit of an audit. So think about what skills do I have now? All that's both research technical skills and transferable skills. think about where do I want to be career-wise and what skills will I need for that role. And that's actually part of the impact section where you'll have to talk about that, you know, your career and how your skills fit that, the skills development fits that role. And then, so you know, you've got that. So then fill in the gaps here. What are the skills and training that you hope to gain at Queen's during your fellowship? So just a bit more about training. So again, they should be aligned. Your training needs should be aligned to the fellows' career plans. So the training needs are your skills that you're going to get, or your research skills. You're going to get that through your research project and the expertise of your supervisor and people in the wider school. But there's also these transferable skills, you know, lots of different things, which I'm not going to talk about because a lot of these are available through our Queen's Postdoctoral Development Centre, and Lisa's going to talk about those now in a minute. I just wanted to also point out that in addition to the Postdoctoral Development Centre, there's also a Queen's Fellowship Academy, and this is for holders of prestigious fellowships. So if you are successful with the Marie Curie Postdoc Fellowship, you will be an automatic member of this, and this also provides some additional bespoke training, mentorship and networking opportunities. So it might be something that you might want to reference in your application. You can also get skills then by participating in dissemination and outreach activities. And then there's also opportunities for skills during your secondments and the non-academic placement at the end. Okay, so just before we go on to Lisa, just the last question in this section is 1.4, quality and appropriateness of the researcher's professional experience, competence and skills. So basically, why are you the best person for this fellowship? You're going to be evaluated according to your career stage. So just choose the key highlights from your CV and showcase them in this section, and show to the evaluator why you are the best person to do this project and to do this fellowship. Okay, so I'm going to hand over now. Hopefully Lisa is on the call. Maybe Lisa, you could turn on your camera. Hopefully she's here. Lisa, yes, do you want to speak? Oh, you are here. Good, good. So I'm going to hand over now to Lisa. Lisa is the Postdoctoral Development Centre Officer at Queen's Postdoctoral Development Centre, and Lisa's going to talk to you about the centre and the support and the training available. So hopefully, Lisa, I'm going to now hand you over control. So with no technical glitches, hopefully this will work. Right, I have handed. Do you want to take control, Lisa, of the slides? Yes.
Yeah, I think that's worked. Okay. Great.
Yes, seems to have.
Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Thank you so much. So yes, my name is Lisa, and I work at the Postdoctoral Development Centre at Queen's. So I just have very few quick slides just to highlight some of the training and development opportunities that are available through the PDC. And also, hopefully, you'll get these slides after, so you can reference some of the resources later when you're doing your applications. So the Postdoctoral Development Centre at Queen's really exists to support postdoctoral researchers to progress their career. And we do this through a number of different sort of avenues. So we look at resources and culture. So we provide information and signposting to postdocs. We offer them development opportunities through training and workshops. And we're there for career support. We're involved in policy to make sure that Queen's is a good place for postdocs to work. Same with representation, so that postdocs' voices are heard. And recognition is a big part of what we do as well, celebrating the really valuable contributions that postdocs make to the research community. So how do we do all of that? So a big part of what we do is welcoming new postdocs to Queen's, and we do this through a number of ways. So we have new postdoc induction sessions that run regularly, and they are really to help postdocs settle in at Queen's, signpost them to the different sources of support and different resources that are offered both through the Postdoctoral Development Centre and other teams at Queen's. And we also have a new postdoc welcome booklet, which is available on our website. So do go and have a look at that. It's got lots of useful information in there. Everything from sort of career development and training right through to how to find a GP or how to take public transport. So there's loads of information in there. We also, a big part of what we do is our workshops. So there's a few there on the screen. That's not all of them, it's just a selection. So you can see a bit of a flavour for what we offer. So project management, time management, applying for lectureships, applying for fellowships, supervising skills and looking at research impact. And there's a full list on that link at the bottom there that you can go and have a look and see if any of them would be of interest to you. We have other programs and sort of ad hoc information sessions and events throughout the year as well. So two of our sort of long-standing programs that are really popular is our postdoctoral leadership program. That's a 2-day full-day workshop that always gets great feedback. And we also offer a postdoc group mentoring program where we match up groups of postdocs with a member of academic staff for a period of mentoring. Like I said, we have other ad hoc sort of information sessions if there's new policies or something that postdocs need to know about, and other events. For example, this year for the first time we had a book club, a career development book club for women postdocs. So there's always lots going on that you can get involved with. As far as career support goes, we have a dedicated research careers and employability officer, Jill, who runs lots of career workshops and career events, some of which are highlighted there on the slide. And between Jill and I, we also offer personalised career support. So that can look like anything just from a one-to-one chat about the direction of your career through to CV feedback, interview preparation, help, and then mock interviews as well. And we also have a PDC podcast, which there's lots of episodes around career exploration with guests from lots of different sectors, both academic and other. I mentioned about policy, so I don't have too much time to go into this in too much detail, but one of the policies that applies to research staff at Queen's is all research staff at Queen's are entitled to 10 days to focus on their career development. And something as well that the PDC has done a lot of work on over the last couple of years is improving the personal development review process for research staff. So we have developed a new form that's specifically designed for research staff and helps them embed those 10 days of career development time sort of into that process. And there's lots of guidance tailored directly to postdocs. We have a postdoc society at Queen's as well. So this operates sort of independently. It's for postdocs and by postdocs, and it just gets some administrative support from the PDC. They host a range of different events throughout the year. So their sort of big yearly event is the Postdoc Showcase, which brings postdocs from across all faculties together to present their research. And then they also have different types of events throughout the year. So their writing retreats are very popular, and then they have other sort of well-being and social events. So this year they've had yoga classes, they do well-being walks, and then they have some social events as well. So the one that's coming up is a trivia quiz. And we also have a postdoc parents network at Queen's that's just recently launched as well. I think this is my last slide. So I mentioned that a really important part of what the PDC is about is recognising all the great work that postdocs do and how they contribute to the research at Queen's. So we do this in a number of ways. I've already mentioned the Postdoc Showcase. We have annual National Postdoc Appreciation Week celebrations in September. And then one of the big things we do for recognition is we have annual PDC postdoc awards. So those are awards that are across all 3 faculties. So there's 3 things you can nominate for: research, support, and citizenship and outreach. So they run every year and are awarded in September. So that's me. There's some links on these slides to the PDC website. Everything I've spoken about today is on there and a lot more. So please do go have a look at it. And I'll also pop the PDC's email address into the chat here. So if you have any questions you want or anything you want to talk about, just do give us a shout. But that's me.
Great, thank you, Lisa. I wonder, can I just take control here again? Yes. That's great. Thank you very much, Lisa. Very useful information. So I think you can take that information on and go into those links that Lisa gave and sort of reference some of that training in that section where it asks you about what training you will need in order to achieve your career aspirations. So that's great. That's really useful. Thanks, Lisa. So it's now 11:24. I think we're ready for a wee bit of a break. So as we say, we in this part of the world, small break. Maybe we will take a break till 11:30, so 6 minutes, and give everybody a chance to stretch their legs, and we'll come back then at 11:30. Okay, thank you.